Hello, this is John from Military Systems Explained, and today's topic is the M198 155mm towed howitzer. At first glance, it looks like just a gun on wheels. In reality, it is a complete field system built around one question. How do you deliver heavy 155mm firepower without bringing a tracked vehicle everywhere you go? The M198 became the standard 155mm howitzer for the United States Army, and it was designed to replace the older M114 series. That had been the standard since the early 1940s. The problem it was built to solve was not simply range. It was deployability, sustainment, and real-world crew workflow. Beginning in 1968, development at Rock Island Arsenal focused on a modern towed howitzer that could be moved and supported efficiently, then brought into action with predictable procedures and manageable logistics. That is why the core facts matter. A 9-person crew, a weight around 15,800 pounds, or about 7,170 kilograms, and a range described as up to 20 miles, or about 32 kilometers. Those numbers are not trivia. They define what can be transported, how fast it can be emplaced, and what kind of artillery unit it can realistically support. The M198 was specified as a medium, towed 155mm system, intended to replace the older M114 series, and serve both the United States Army and the United States Marine Corps. The requirement was not just a gun, but a package that could be sustained by a field crew and integrated into expeditionary logistics. That meant predictable emplacement and displacement procedures, compatibility with towing and support vehicles, and practical crew workload during sustained firing. And it also meant living inside real procurement limits, with unit prices cited in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range, in late Cold War and early post-Cold War fiscal years. Strategic mobility was also part of the requirement set, but with real constraints. A Government Accountability Office review noted that Marine Corps airlift of the M198 depended on heavy lift capability, specifically the CH-53 Echo, and only under favorable conditions. In other words, the system was designed to be deployable, but not light. It sat in the middle ground, where mobility exists, yet always has a cost. Development began in 1968 at Rock Island Arsenal, with the goal of producing a modern towed replacement that could be proven through staged testing. A prototype was built in 1969, and firing tests began in 1970, anchoring the program in measured evaluation rather than paper performance. Design and development work at the Rodman Laboratory ran through the mid-1970s, before the program moved into full production at Rock Island Arsenal in 1978 and entered service in 1979. What is useful for your episode is the discipline of that timeline: concept, prototype, firing evaluation, then a controlled move to production. A fires bulletin from 1979 references final operational testing and follow-on evaluation of production howitzers, showing that even after fielding, the system was still being validated and refined through formal processes. In physical terms, the M198 is built around a simple idea. The carriage is the system. A split-trail layout gives the weapon a stable firing stance, without turning it into a specialized vehicle, and the gun's major mechanisms are chosen for repeatable field handling, rather than elegance. The recoil system is hydrop pneumatic. The breech uses an interrupted screw design, and the muzzle brake is a double baffle type, choices that reflect a gun expected to fire hard, reset consistently, and be serviced by soldiers and Marines, who also have to move it. The trail geometry and carriage controls are there to translate crew effort into predictable emplacement, traverse within its mounting, and practical displacement. Rock Island Arsenal's own history of the program also hints at what mattered most in production. Recoil components were treated as critical hardware. The Arsenal produced large batches of M45 recoil mechanisms in cooperation with a private contractor, and later produced complete howitzers in additional runs. an industrial pattern that matches the way artillery systems are sustained over time, through key assemblies, spares, and controlled rebuild capacity, rather than constant redesign. By the mid-1990s, the main question around the M198 was not whether it worked, but what burden it imposed. A Government Accountability Office review found recurring maintenance issues, yet concluded they were not severe enough by themselves to justify accelerating a replacement program. Availability reported over several years averaged about 93% for Army units and about 89% for Marine Corps units, even though some fixes were identified but not funded, and repair delays could be driven by common part supply constraints. The same report is especially useful because it separates maintenance from mobility. Marines reported difficulty moving the system across soft terrain with their prime mover, while the Army experienced fewer towing problems and successfully operated it in desert sand conditions. Differences the report links to how each service employed the weapon in its mission set. Once the M198 entered unit service, deployment was defined less by factory milestones and more by how quickly a battery could move the gun, sustain it, and keep it credible under continuous use. A useful window into that reality comes from Marine Corps Logistics at Barstow, which describes a rebuild pipeline that test-fired and road-tested M198 howitzers after maintenance actions. That sustainment loop connects directly to operational life. Units deploy, fire, accumulate wear, and then cycle equipment back through overhaul and verification before it returns to service. For a towed gun, that cycle is a core part of deployment as a capability. Operationally, the M198 appears wherever expeditionary forces needed, a full-power 155mm capability, without committing a self-propelled vehicle. In the Gulf War, a specific M198 nicknamed Damn Yankees, from Battery F, 2nd Battalion, 12th Marines, is documented as the first ground-based unit to fire, in support of Operation Desert Storm, useful here as evidence of early theater entry and rapid transition into sustained artillery support. In Iraq, official Department of Defense photo captions show Marines firing the M198 during operations around Fallujah in late 2004, including Operation Al-Fajr. Clear documentation of routine operational employment during prolonged campaigns. The operational impact is structural. The M198 enabled deployable heavy artillery, but it also tied mobility to prime movers and ground conditions. The Government Accountability Office documents that trade-off directly. The Marine Corps reported difficulty moving the system across soft terrain with its prime mover, while the Army reported fewer towing problems and successful operation in desert sand conditions. Differences linked to how each service employed the weapon in its mission set. The M198 did not grow into a long chain of named sub-variants. Its evolution is better understood as a handoff. Once the requirement shifted toward lighter lift and faster deployment, the replacement program became the real upgrade path. The United States Marine Corps and the United States Army moved toward the M777, beginning in 2005, and the logic was straightforward. Keep the same 155mm mission, but cut the transport burden hard. Open technical summaries describe the M777 as about 41% lighter than the M198 it replaced, which is exactly the kind of change that reshapes how a towed battery can be moved and employed. In United States service, the M198 is now largely a legacy system, with the modern towed force centered on M777. Internationally, the story is different. The M198 remains in active inventories, where a proven, full-power towed howitzer still fits force structure and logistics. Open operator summaries that cite the International Institute for Strategic Studies list remaining fleets such as Thailand with about 118, Pakistan with about 148, Egypt with about 218, and Saudi Arabia with about 60 in the Army and 58 in the National Guard. The M198's legacy is not a single breakthrough feature. It is the fact that it made heavy, 155mm artillery, a dependable expeditionary tool for decades, built to be moved, fired, worn down, rebuilt, and trusted again. That life cycle is visible even in the industrial details. Rock Island Arsenal produced 1,908 recoil mechanisms over one run, then later built 421 complete howitzers in another. Evidence of a system sustained as a long-term capability, not a short-term project. Subscribe for more technical breakdowns of military systems, one platform at a time.